small till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't, till it ain't. I'm building up a wall till it breaks. She hated when I call and it's late. I don't wanna keep you waiting. I hope I never keep you waiting. She think I know it all, but I don't.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Mixtape with Scott. I'm the host, Scott Cunningham. I'm a professor in the economics department at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, where it is still piping hot outside, very uncomfortable. And for those that are just turning in for the first time, this is a podcast that is devoted to the personal stories of living economists and tries to create an oral history of the last 50 years of the profession of economics. And this week's part of the way I do the oral history part is I kind of pick topics that I'm personally interested in, and then I use that as a great way to select people that I otherwise would don't know very well, but I can justify it based on the grounds that I can say, "Hey, I'm doing a thing on this kind of thing, and will you be on it?" And then they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'll definitely do it." And so the things I like to do a lot of the time, what I like to do is I like to have as my hook a student of dot dot dot. That's one of the ways I really enjoy kind of grouping people is to say, well, these are the students of Gary Becker, or these are the students of Josh Angrist, or these are the students of David Card. And that's one way to do it. And that does kind of fit with this one a little bit. But another way I like to do it is by field. And so one of the things that I've been doing also, but haven't been emphasizing it as much, is microeconomic theory. And we've had some people in microeconomic theory that kind of are not necessarily grouped themselves, like in the same sub area of micro theory, but there's been this particular person does fit with another person, that another couple of people that we've had on it, because I am also interested in departments, the story of economics as told through departments. And so this is where this is going. So this week's guest is named Mohammad Akbarpour. He's a professor of economics at Stanford University, and he studies mechanism design, microtheory, social and economic networks. And it's real easy to sort of, first of all, I actually am a genuinely super excited by everything Mohammad does. So that's part of it. I've been very fascinated also by him. He was Al Roth's student, as well as Roberts and Milgram, and also Matt Jackson. And Matt Jackson had been on the show in the third season. And so, thinking about, and also he's at Stanford, and Stanford is such a special department. That's where Roth is. That's where Jackson is. That's where Milgram and Roberts are. That's where Susan Athey is. That's where Hito Embens is. That's where Ed Lazier was. There's just a lot of great people there, and they're spread over all these departments too. So there's people in the business school. There's people in the economics department. There's people in operations research, computer science even. So it's just like such a interesting university for how they've staffed these economists in all these different places. And it kind of comes out a little bit in this interview with Mohammad that it also is probably part of its strengths, because there's so many ways that new ideas get to be brought in to the field of economics when they're spread over OR and computer science and all these other areas. So Mohammad has a fascinating story. That's my kitty cat Ronnie. Has a fascinating story, and I don't want to really take from it because I know people are wanting to hear it. But this was such a wonderful interview, just to go through Mohammed's life growing up in Iran, and just this like is the word circuitous. I'm trying to think of how you just kind of work your way to where you are the long way. And it's in hindsight, it's like in real time when you get from point A to point B, it can feel like the long way. Like, why didn't I just study economics in college? Or like, why didn't I do it in high school? It's like Hito Imbens, literally, I think in high school was studying econometrics, and he picked Erasmus to go to college. And I believe he like, majored in econometrics, which he had to pick in high school. That's crazy. I never took a single class in economics in college, and it can sort of feel like sometimes you think, boy, I took the long way to get here. But in hindsight, you look back and you think, oh, this was the way it was always supposed to be. This was actually the short way. The long way might have been, for all you know, to major in economics as an undergrad or pick it. You can see, and then with Muhammad's story, um, it's really wonderful to see how all of the other experiences that took him to economics last has probably been the real key to why he's done such really wonderful work and is such a neat part of the field. And so I want to thank him, and I want to thank all of you for listening. We're still going to be doing these every other week. Um, I hope that's okay. We might eventually go back to a weekly model. But I thought that doing it every other week would just give a little bit more of a nicer pace. I've had a lot of people say that it's like drinking from a fire hose a little bit, and they can't keep up because they are long. They're like an hour and a half, an hour and a half. So I thought that that would be good. But we'll see. I can sort of track how the stats are, and if it seems like it's going down, we can always go back. But I thought that that would be that might be. We hit 100, and we're on the fourth season, so maybe it's like we'll do what every other sane podcast does, except for the ones that do it every day, and just do it every other week. So we'll see. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy this. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did. Like I said, I think it's really wonderful. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. See you in a minute. All right. Well, it is a pleasure to have a guest on the show. I've actually only, I was just, we were just chatting, and I said I've actually think we've only chatted on Twitter and Facebook before. And so it was really, I really appreciate you agreeing to be on the show, Mohammed. Mohammed, can you tell us, for the sake of the listener, how to your full name and your full title and who pays your paycheck?
Sure, I'm uh, glad to be here, Scott. Yeah, as you said, we've been hanging out a lot on social media. Both of which I'm not active in them anymore, but for time being.
Yep.
My name is Mohammad Akbarpour. Mohammad is the most common male name in the world, as you know. Akbarpour is my last name, which has two pieces, Akbar and Pur. Akbar is the name of my great grandfather, and Pur means son of in Farsi. So it's like
Ah.
in Turkish. So Akbarpour becomes like Akbaroglu in Turkish.
Oh, great grandfather.
Yeah,
How
exactly.
when was he alive? He's
Uh,
still alive?
I have not met him actually. This is the grandfather of my father, and I have never met him.
Oh, wait, so
He was, yeah, he's like, yeah, he was not alive in 1985 that I was born. So,
wait, do you know much about him?
no, he cooked bread, what for as part of his job, and
Hmm.
then so his first name was actually the person who cooks bread. His last name was first the person who cooks bread. Uh,
Oh,
And then it was changed to Akbarpour through his son, which is my grandfather, who was a farmer actually in our small.
Oh,
So
wait.
I'm
So when was he alive? When was he alive? 1800s or early 1900s?
yeah, early 1900s. He
Ah,
was.
okay.
So my grandfather would have been 95 if he was alive now, and his father was 20 years older.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So
Okay.
so
It's
that's
just tell me about where you grew up, where specifically.
so I'm from this small city in Iran called Damghan. It's the city of it's a city in the middle of like the very hot desert.
Yeah.
It's a very small city. The most people's job is to be farmers of pistachio. So that's the job they
Oh.
have, which is an interesting marketplace because then there are these people who are the dealers who buy the pistachio and they make most of the money out of it,
Oh,
not
really?
not the
The
farmers.
farmers don't make much money from the pistachios. It's the
No, not
middleman.
much. Yeah. So I was most of my childhood was there. We were here and there. I moved to Tehran when I was, I mean, I grew up, I also spent a few years in a religious city called Qom, which is the Vatican of Iran.
Oh.
So that was due to my father having moving around. And then I came to Tehran when I was 6, and I went to elementary school in Tehran.
How are
So
those two places pretty different? Is Tehran a big city?
Tehran is like, yeah, think of Mexico City and Buenos Aires. That's like Tehran.
Oh.
Like a city of 10 million plus people. It's like crazy and amazing. I love Tehran.
So where in the city did you live?
We moved, but mostly in the most of my time was in actually what you can call central Tehran, which is so Tehran has the south side, which is more on the poor side of the city, and the north side, which is on the like rich side of the city. And then
Mm,
the center is more like a middle class part of the city.
mm.
So lived in the basically very close to the downtown area.
Oh, so you lived in the downtown part of the city.
Most of my time, not in the first 5 years, but at age 13 until 23, when I came to US, I lived in downtown area, which is a bit
Ah.
old Tehran, if you like. The it's the like all the it's like all the history of Tehran is around those squares and streets.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what did your mom and dad do for a living? What were they doing for you? Because you mentioned your dad moved around a lot.
Yeah, they were mostly moving around for studying, actually. They didn't study before. My dad didn't have any college degree before I was born, so he was moving around for studying. And
He's
my
going to
mom,
colleges? He was going to
yeah,
universities?
yeah, yeah, he went to college when he was 27, basically.
Huh.
So I was born already, my mom too. They went
Oh,
to college, they studied law and Arabic language, respectively.
huh.
And yeah, my dad continued practicing law, and my mom became a teacher of Arabic language.
Oh. Wait, your
So
dad kind of had like a second career as a lawyer, as an older man. He started over with
yeah,
went to law school.
yeah.
Oh, wow. That's not common, right?
Because of that, so Iran had this cultural revolution, post-revolution, which they called shut down universities for a few years. So many
Oh.
people of that generation actually couldn't go to college at the right time, basically 18-year-old. So many
Mm,
of them went to the military service, many of them went to work as a farmer back to their homeland, things like that,
hmm
or something else essentially. So many people actually did go to college later in their lives. Many
mm,
people didn't go to college to begin with.
hmm. How
So
common was it for them of that missing cohort? How common is it though to go back to school?
very uncommon. Actually,
Yeah.
the base like in my dad's family, they essentially he was the chosen person. Like not every child. So my dad has like 5 brothers and 2 sisters. He was the only one who ended up immigrating to other cities and coming to Tehran and having really a more. So I would have been like where my cousins are right now if he didn't decide to immigrate to Tehran.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It
a very.
probably it probably says a lot about his underlying ability that there's a whole blanket of a generation that gets treated with no education and he he's one of these people that rises up later. He must have been pretty sharp, or he is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a sharp and lucky in the sense that the family chose. It wasn't really a choice on your side. It was a
Oh,
choice.
I see.
So it was both of them. Yeah. So the other siblings all stayed in our small city downtown, and they are all
I
there now.
got it.
So that's
What'd you like to do as a kid? What kind of games did you like to play?
I played soccer all the time. So
All the
that's
time?
yeah. I was 24/7 soccer player.
Really? Is
Yeah,
that, are you exceptional in that sense? Like, or was that basically all of you and your friends played soccer all the time?
it was the most common game for kids for sure. We also played other games like the games that you throw a piece of wood and hit it and someone else should catch it. It's kind of like baseball. But
Mm,
soccer was because soccer is kind of a spectacular in terms of you don't need anything except two legs and a
yeah,
round.
totally. Hmm.
So if you were not growing up in an affluent area, soccer is the play you would do. That
I
was
never
the
thought about that. You only need the ball.
Yeah, you need a ball and the ability to run, essentially. That's it.
Right.
So we
Right.
used to, yeah, I used to play soccer all the time. There were other stuff too, but soccer was definitely number one.
Yeah. And a large enough space, I guess. But even times when you don't even have a smaller space, you see people playing soccer all the time, just kicking stuff
Yeah,
around.
yeah, I remember we played all the time in the small alleys. We put two stones as the goal and you play and
Yeah, totally. So
yeah.
you pretty good? Were you really, really good for your cohort?
Yeah, I was very good until high school. I was always in the team of the high school and elementary school and all of that. There was a point I was thinking, should I become a professional soccer player? And I think two things happened. One of them was that the family were not as supportive. And the other thing was a couple of players came to our high school when I was in the first year of high school, a couple of students. And they
Mm.
were like geniuses. And I realized I'm not as good as them. So
Mm. At
I
soccer, they were like brilliant soccer players.
They were like really brilliant. And one of them ended up actually going and becoming a professional soccer player, playing in the best club of Iran. So,
Ah, ah. So
uh,
what club did you and your family follow?
Iran has two main clubs, like equivalent of Real Madrid and Barcelona.
I see.
It's Persepolis and Esteghlal.
Yeah.
So Persepolis was the team that I was always in love with and went to stadium to watch their games.
Oh
And
yeah, it was in town. You could go easily to the games.
Yeah, it was a Tehran team.
Ah.
I didn't go to a lot, but I went to a few of them for sure.
How big were those stadiums?
It's
Enormous?
yeah, it was a 100,000 population. Uh,
Oh.
it wasn't filled in all games, but it was typically 30 to 50K in the
Oh.
stadium.
Huh. So
Uh,
that like took up a lot of your leisure as a kid, just the whole life of soccer.
yeah, I would say soccer was multiple hours per day easily.
So when you were little, before high school, do you think like your teachers saw you though as also a student? Like he's a Mohammed's like actually a very, very good student. Was that showing up already when you were young?
I was always one of the like in a class of 30, 40 students. So in Iran, I'm in the generation of baby boom, so our classes were pretty big and we had these tables that three people sit next to each other, like we were kind of crushed into each other.
Mm,
And in this class of 30, 40 people, I was always in the top three, four. So I was never the best student in the class, but I was always one of the top three, four. So
mm,
yeah, if they wanted to put a bet on who is going to go to a relatively good university later in their life, I would have been one of the three, four in elementary school. So in elementary school, I did not go to any fancy place. It was a local public school, which was later I realized actually it was a very low quality school.
mm,
Then for the middle school, I participated in an exam which is one of those public institutions in Iran. There is an institution called National Organization for Development of Exceptional Talents. It's like
mm,
under the president's watch.
mm.
Uh, and they take an exam in the whole country every year. And each city they select a small group of people. In Tehran, they select like 200 students
Mm,
based on this exam to go to this school, which is a publicly funded. They have a tuition, but the tuition is flexible depending on your income. So it's a publicly funded school, which is essentially the best high school and middle school in Iran.
mm. In
Uh,
the whole country.
Essentially, it competes with the best private schools, probably better than them too. So they
Mm.
have very high quality teachers, and they have, yeah, it's. So I was lucky to get to that, and I was the
Now,
only
what is
person.
that again? That's like a contest, or what is
Yeah,
that? Like,
that's a contest you take at the end of your fifth grade.
huh?
And they select 200 people out of whatever, a very large number of people. And I was, yeah, it's kind of, there's a lot of noise in that contest, of
Yeah,
course. If fifth grades, what do they know?
right.
But it's a math and like science contest, essentially.
Oh. When
So
you were
that,
like top three in those classes, Mohammed, uh, were you exerting yourself to get to the top three? You think, looking back, or were you one of these kids that they're like, I wasn't even really trying and I was good in school? What was it? One of those things?
it's, yeah, I'm just thinking, it, I definitely did try for a couple of courses, definitely. I really liked like science. I loved physics
Mhm.
from the beginning. I still like physics more than economics. Uh,
Mhm.
so, uh, but no, I mean, no one really around me was someone who pushed me to, like, my parents were not really the type of parents who were like, you have to study hard, sit down, do your homework. They were completely passive from that perspective.
Yeah.
So it was mostly, yeah, a mix of studying for a couple of courses and I don't know, it just worked out.
Did it change when you go to the what now? So this new school, this like best school in the country, is it? Are you going to have to move at this point? You have to relocate?
No, it was far from our home, but I used to basically take public transport every day to go. It was a
I
like
see.
minute-ish public transport.
How
Buses,
long was it? How long on a bus?
50 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's not bad. So, did you know anybody that was going to be there before you went there?
Zero. It was actually one of the scariest days of my life. The first day
Right.
in school, I went there and there were all these people coming from fancy private schools.
Oh,
So it was a little bit of a interesting experience.
yeah, yeah. How quickly did it? Was it a? Did it? Was it pretty bumpy when you got there? Like in terms of?
It never really became from an educational perspective easy. I was never a good student in that school. I was always ranked around 80, 90 out of 200.
Oh,
And it's mostly because I never believed I can compete with these people, really. They were like people from both strong family backgrounds and private schools and so on and so forth. So I never really, in that school, I was never considered a good student.
wait. So you couldn't compete with them though on? It sounded like those were non-cognitive traits. You couldn't compete with them because of their family, like being wealthy or something like that.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't compete. Like I don't know, in this school, the level of courses they taught was always one or two level above other schools.
Mm,
So you really needed some kind of support system to teach you like this level of physics or math. Or I remember they taught us number theory on the second year of middle school, seventh grade.
golly.
Like a basic number theory, but I totally remember that there was a class called number theory, and I was like, this is insane. I mean, I can't follow anything.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. Wait,
yeah,
that would have been how old were you? That was like high school?
that was seventh grade.
Yeah,
Like,
in I grew up in Mississippi. They don't teach you number theory in the seventh grade unless we,
yeah.
they wait until never.
No,
So okay.
that was a strange, yeah. We learned like graph theory on 10th grade, for example. You said
Wow.
like my interest in networks really started there. We were taught graph theory in high school.
Hmm.
So it was something that if your parents were educated or if you were connected to the right group of students,
Yeah.
you could actually educate yourself, or at
Hmm.
least your family could tell you, hey, go and buy this book and read that book.
Mm.
So I was always playing soccer and being ranked 80 and 90 in that high school and middle school. It was a sixth grade all the way to 12th grade school.
So you stay there the whole time?
Yeah.
Well, so did you have favorite classes? Were they physics? You said you love physics, but was that what you would have said by the 12th grade? When you looked back on the classes you had in high school, would you have said, my favorite class has been physics, or would you say something else?
No, the definitely it was my mathematics class on 10th grade.
Really?
Yeah, it was by far. I had a teacher who later actually got a PhD in math education, and he is now a professor of math education.
Oh,
He
back in
turned
Iran? Back in Iran?
He is now in Canada. Uh,
Oh, okay.
he actually completely turned the class into a game situation. So instead of really teaching us something, he gave us activities in groups of three, and we did them.
Mm.
And that was the first time I realized, holy shit, I'm actually able to do math, and it's beautiful.
Wait,
So
what happened? Why was that such a change doing that physical thing?
it was not, he didn't cover anything. He helped us discover things, I would put it that
Oh,
way. And I realized I love discovering things, and I'm still actually in love with that activity of going and figuring out.
yeah.
And he did a lot of tricks to teach us basic algebra, basic even calculus, like
Mm.
the function. He used a lot of activities. I still remember some of his things, like he wanted to teach us power. And he said, suppose you have a piece of paper and you like tie it once like this, like I just tied this once. So this is 2 to power 1 because now you have two pieces. And then if you
Mhm.
tie it twice, it's 2 to power 2 because, right, you have four pieces, right?
Ah,
And then he asked us, okay, you tell me now, what is 2 to power 0? It's a very strange concept, right?
uh-huh.
And everyone in class was like, well, if I don't tie it at all, it's 1. So
Oh,
that was the uh,
they
and
all
I
figured everybody kind of could see it and they kind of discovered it. Yeah. What do
yeah.
you remember? Do you remember a big discovery from that class that still, the feeling of it and what it was that still sticks with you?
Uh, this not a specific thing. I for that I have to think a bit more.
Uh-huh.
Venn diagrams, actually, I remember how to work with Venn diagrams and what is the meaning of meet and what is the meaning of union.
Oh,
It
yeah.
played a lot, and basically understanding like the how to take unions and meets of multiple things. But the main discovery was really the fact that mathematics is about discovering the world. Really, that was the uh, it was that class that did it. And then he left our school, and we went back to the usual lecturing and
So that
teaching.
was like exceptional. You had this 10th grader experience of discovering stuff and it like you sort of got addicted to it a little bit, but you couldn't really tap into it again the rest of the time.
Yeah, in high school, definitely it never happened again until the 12th grade,
Hmm.
which is the grade that you have to actually study hard for the university's entrance examination. In Iran, you have
Mhm.
to take this. This is not a matching market point, but in order to go to college, you have to take this exam. In our year, 480,000 people, I think, took that exam in mathematics area.
Mhm.
And they rank people from 1 to 480,000. So
No way.
yeah, so it's literally everyone has a number. So that's the thing you do in 12th grade to prepare for that exam. But
That's a
even,
continuous, there's some algorithm, there's some score that's so finely grained that they can do a ranking of 500,000 people.
yeah, it's an exam of 400 multiple choice
Ah,
questions, and each
yep.
question is rated differently based on how hard is it and how.
Yep.
Sometimes you have ties, like two people are 17, two people are like 1,000, but mostly you can rank people.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
the Yeah, that year we had a class on graph theory, which, despite the fact that I had to study for multiple choice exams instead of actually learning something deeply,
Mm,
I loved it, like the Hamiltonian cycles and the traveling salesman problem definition and things like that.
mm, mm. Mm.
That was another time that, which was kind of interesting because both of these classes, in a way, the emphasis was much more on modeling a phenomenon using like symbols and essentially math tools instead
Hmm.
of solving the problem. So
Hmm.
yeah, we were not really that much into like solving a complex problem, traveling salesman problem. They told us, hey, this is the way you can model this real world phenomenon using graph theory. The
Okay.
solution is really hard. That's fine. Who cares? Uh,
Oh,
so that was later in my life. I realized that's a piece of math that I like the most, which is modeling.
the modeling part. Wait, so the test is not getting on at the modeling though, right? Or it is?
No, the test. I mean, had a couple of questions out of 400 from graph theory.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. The graph theory,
And
right?
the questions were like the type of how many Hamiltonian cycles you have here or things like that.
Got it. Got it.
But the class was really about why graph theory is useful.
I see. I
So
see.
and I really enjoyed that class too.
What was
So
your ranking? What was your final ranking on that score? That 450, 500,000
oh,
person
yeah, I was 18.
18.
Yeah, so it was
A
an
little better than being in the half of the distribution the way you'd been in that high school. I bet that
yeah.
must have felt amazing.
I remember I met in Iran, you have these school principals, vice presidents, basically, below the principal.
Uh-huh.
Job is to make sure students behave. So he saw me in a street in that summer and he told me, what became your ranking? I said 18. And then he told me, that's fine. 18,000 is also a good score. He totally couldn't believe it. So
That's like that's so outside of his Bayesian priors. He can't even wrap his head around that.
yeah, because we didn't have a good relationship given how much I played soccer instead of going to classes.
Were you surprised? Because in high school you said you really didn't feel like you could compete with these kids.
No, because once you get back to university's entrance exam, it's actually you don't have to be beat your classmates. You go back to the
Got it.
level of classes that is for the whole country. So
Mm,
I got my confidence back. And there was also a bunch of books that were super helpful.
mm,
So I was surprised at the beginning that, wow, I'm doing actually well in this practice exams. But
hmm.
by the time that the actual exam happened, I actually expected I'm gonna get a rank below 500 almost
Yeah.
surely.
But it
Uh,
must have been it must have been great then to get your confidence back. That must have been felt good.
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I bet.
That was the first time that I was like, okay, if I actually work hard, I can learn and solve problems.
Mm. So does the matching happen pretty automatically? Because I actually don't know a lot about the Iranian universities, but I assumed that the school you go to is one of like the MIT of Iran or something like that.
It's a serial dictatorship. So you get your number, and then person number one goes and chooses a major in a school. Person number two, subject to not being filled, basically chooses. So I was 18, which means you are guaranteed you can go anywhere you like.
And
So
so why this school? What's its reputation to a high school kid?
it's kind of like the school that you would choose if you can go. It's exactly MIT of Iran, as you said. It's the most
Yeah.
prestigious engineering school. University of Tehran is also pretty amazing. This is Sharif
Mm,
University of Technology.
mm,
But it's kind of an equilibrium concept, as they say. It's like all the people in my year, like my major, the last rank that could make it to my major was 53, for example.
mm,
52 out of 53 came to that major.
mm,
Ex post, it was not the right decision to go to electrical engineering of that university. If I go back, I would do computer science or math. Uh, but
mm.
but the equilibrium was electrical engineering is the most prestigious field, so everyone did
Oh,
engineering.
how'd
I
you get that? How'd you get that belief, you think? Thinking back to high school, where'd that come from?
It was a lot of herding in the country for some
Mm,
reason. The whole everyone last year went to electrical engineering,
hmm.
ops, and Stanford University and MIT and Berkeley always admitted 4 or 5 people from that electrical engineering department to their electrical
Uh,
engineering PhD.
hmm.
So it was kind of a guaranteed route to go to an engineering school at top departments, like top
Got
10.
it.
So that was the equilibrium. But again, exposed, I think that was not the right choice for me, but it is what
Did
it
you
is.
start to feel that it wasn't the right choice
Oh,
as a
immediately.
student?
Yeah. On
Me,
the third quarter, third semester, second year, I was like, I'm done with this shit. So
Mm.
I didn't like really electrical engineering. So I started taking classes from other departments.
You can do that. You can't change your major, but you can endogenously pick a lot of classes so long as you satisfy your major.
Yeah, you could change your major too. I did not know which major I like to do. So I
Mm,
started taking classes in economics actually, and in management. There was a class on system dynamics, they call it. It was basically numerical modeling of social and economic systems
mm,
using stocks and flows. It was a software that we use, which was fascinating. I love that class. Like
mm.
I remember so many things discovered from that class that still I'm able to teach them. I'm at that level. I remember them. I took I took a computational biology essentially class from University of Tehran. It was a class that in that year it was called social cognitive biological systems.
Hmm.
It was game theoretic modeling of like biological systems and social systems
Hmm.
by a professor who was a PhD from Berkeley, and he became my favorite character until today. So
Hmm.
uh,
Really? He was your favorite
yeah,
professor that you had?
he was a very hip character, very long hairs, very long beards. You can guess where I'm coming from. All completely white. He was in Berkeley at the time of the hip movement.
Ah.
Extremely left, and a super serious scientist
Hmm.
who loved discovering things. And the way he was teaching his class was really, at some points in his class, he stopped, looked at the board, and said, "This is like poetry. This is so beautiful."
Hmm.
That was the character. And his office was really messy, full of things. So we used to get together after the class, walk around University of Tehran, have coffees together. He was the first person who treated me like a person who is worth spending time with. Before that,
Yeah.
professors really didn't have time for undergrads. I mean,
Right. Right.
I'm also responsible for that. I don't put a ton of time for undergrads here relative to grads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Really spend quite a bit of time with me.
Mm. Hmm.
Uh,
Did he ever
uh,
say anything like, I don't think electrical engineering's for you, but you got to keep doing it, or some, he ever kind of make comments
oh,
about your
totally. No, no,
aptitude?
he was the person who basically told me, look, you have to do either operations research or economics. And he actually pushed me together with the professor of that system dynamics class who really pushed for economics. They pushed me to apply for other fields.
Did you
And
think about OR?
I did apply to OR actually. So I started my PhD at Stanford in OR actually.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, I applied to econ as well, but I got rejected. So
Oh,
so I got into OR. And my GPA in college was actually pretty bad. I was still ranked 70, 80 out of 150.
huh.
So it was not an package that I could get to Stanford, except if someone like these professors hardly pushed me and write me very good recommendation letters.
Right, right,
So
right.
it was another surprise for people, my classmates, when I got to Stanford. In that one was actually a surprise for myself too. I
You were
applied to,
surprised. What? Why were you surprised?
my package was not really as good as Stanford, except the recommendation letters. My GPA was
Mm,
very bad. Uh, but I guess I was lucky. So I got to Stanford Operations Research.
hmm, hmm.
Yeah.
So what's going on? You step foot in OR. It's got a bunch of economists, right? It's overlapping a little bit with all the mechanism design people, right?
Yeah, there is a lot of people who are there's no PhD economics there, but there are a lot of people who do econ CS type of things, like
Yeah,
Ramesh, Ashish Goel, Amin Saberi, all these people who do econ CS type of things. And I got to I started working with them. I was a master's student actually. I didn't get to their PhD program, so I didn't have funding. So that was a totally different story how I found funding for
Huh.
that.
In
But
OR. We're still talking about OR, right?
yeah, this is still OR.
Got it.
So I
What
got
year
to
is this? This is what? Like
I entered fall of 2009.
9. Okay. You're in the master's program 2009 OR, not the PhD program, because they don't have a PhD program. Is that what you
So
said?
they do. I got rejected from PhD, but they admitted me to masters. So they
Oh,
basically
okay.
told me, we are happy for you to come to masters and pay for your own tuition, which of course I didn't have.
Yeah.
And if you prove yourself, then you can apply to PhD again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I came here and I took a bunch of classes in the first quarter, and at the same time, I was a research assistant for a biologist to pay for my tuition. And then I applied after the first quarter again to their PhD program and to the econ PhD at Stanford.
Mm.
And the econ PhD again rejected me.
Oh.
So, and the MSNE accepted me. So my first quarter grades were very good. And I started doing research with Yin Yu Ye, who is an optimization professor here, linear programming professor.
Mm.
So they admitted me. So I stayed
Okay.
there.
Who's admitting you at this point? Because Econ has rejected you. It's 2010. Is that right? 2009 or 2010?
So econ rejected me in February 2010. MSNE admitted me for February 2010 for the fall of 2010.
Got it. Okay.
I
So then,
started my PhD in fall of 2010, essentially, at MSNE.
and it's called, I actually not following what you're saying. MS.
Oh, the operations research is part of management science and engineering department at Stanford.
I see. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's
So you're
essentially
still in this OR. You're still in this kind of OR track.
yeah, yeah, I'm still an OR. And I started actually taking in that year in my PhD all the first year classes of computer science and OR,
Huh.
algorithm design, like graph theory, like discrete mathematics, actually stochastic processes, Markov chains in an advanced fashion.
Yeah.
I took all these linear programming, convex optimization, and all of that,
Yeah.
which were amazing. I'm so thankful I didn't start in economics because all of these became my future career in econ. Like I used all of those tools.
How often are you like stepping over into the econ department and talking to people at this point?
So I started my PhD and in 2010 at Stanford Operations Research. I took one class from law school called Economic Analysis of Law. It's a professor named Mitch Polinsky, who is an economist, which is kind of very famous in that field.
Yeah.
And I took it totally randomly. I needed an extra class, and I just searched in the list of all classes that timing could work, and I just took this one.
Mm-hmm.
I did very well in that class. I loved it, by the way. Such a beautiful class. It was Gary
Mm.
Becker and models of Baker-like models, Chicago-style models.
You liked those?
I
Had you
loved it.
seen them?
Yeah.
Had you seen them before?
No, that was the first time I was like, wow, you can actually model accidents law and what is the optimal responsibility distribution using math. It was like, wow.
Oh, so you had not seen that stuff.
Or the paper on crime and punishment. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, this is incredible.
Yeah, I totally
So,
get it.
yeah, so I got a very good grade in that class,
Uh-huh.
at the top score of many, many years actually. And this professor, Mitch Polinsky, told me, look, you have to do a PhD in econ. You don't get it. You have to do it. You are born an economist, he told me. I was
Huh.
like, I don't get what you mean, but well, let's see. So
Did he know your situation though, that you'd been rejected twice from the program?
yeah, so he invited me to his home for Thanksgiving.
Oh,
And he is a neighbor of Paul Milgrom.
yeah.
So Paul Milgrom showed up for a few minutes, and then he put me in front of Paul Milgrom and said, "Look, this guy should do economics." And Paul was like, "What do you mean?" I mean, and then Paul was a super nice character at the point, and I told him I'm an operations research PhD. He said, "Actually, I have a lot of operations research things that I need my company to do, auctionomics.
Ah,
Uh, and do you want to be an intern and start working with me in that category? And then we will see how it goes."
yep.
So I went and met him for a coffee the day after. Paul being Paul, the whole coffee was spent about his amazing auction designs. I love that. Uh, he told me, and I was like, wow, this is fascinating.
You
And
hadn't seen that either.
I hadn't seen that either yet.
But it seems like it's funny. It seems like you've already set yourself up by that point where the crosswalk is really like probably almost a process of discovery for yourself because you're so ready for that kind of work, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I took a lot of econ classes in undergrad, a couple of them actually, a
Oh,
macro
okay.
class and principles of econ. So I know I like economics, but I
Hmm.
always thought economics is kind of like the macro is too hard for me and I don't want to. And I'm more into operations research because it's really about modeling and solving.
Got
Uh,
it.
so I was not sure, but I did apply to econ PhD programs too before, so I got rejected.
Hmm. Hmm.
The yeah. Anyways, so Paul told me come work with my company in summer.
Yeah.
So this is after Thanksgiving that he told me that.
So this is 2010 still, right?
Yeah. So in spring of 2011, I took a class with Matt Jackson, uh,
Ah,
information economics,
okay.
and I became one of the top scores of that class. I really
Mm.
Matt's class. Matt is the best, by the way. Uh, he later
I
became
love Matt Jackson. Yep.
Yeah. So and then I contacted econ department admissions committee again, and I told them, hey, uh, can you consider this a score in reconsidering my application?
Okay.
And they again didn't do that.
No
And in
way.
fact, I have an email, and maybe I should not say that in public, but I will. But I have an email that told me you are not even close to the cutoff. Please do not apply again. So I mean, I get it, by the way. My package was not really shining.
Yeah.
So then I did the internship with Paul, and in the middle of internship, he gave me a game theory problem, which was kind of not an easy problem, and I solved it for him.
Mm.
Kind of interesting.
He had not solved it, or he's like
No,
testing.
no, it was more of a he's like I'm too busy to solve this.
Ah.
Yeah, so I solved it. It was actually at the time I asked people around about different solution methods for a game like this. I thought I've cheated. Later, I realized actually that's how research works, which is you ask people about resources. It's perfectly fine.
Mm.
So I did manage to solve it and write it down for him, and he was like, "This is amazing." And I told him, "Do you want to be my advisor?" And he was like, "Sure, but why don't you move to econ?" And I was like, "I applied twice. You rejected me."
You're like, apparently I'm so far from the cutoff. You like read him the letter.
So then Paul wrote to the admissions committee and basically said, you should get this guy. So I got admission letter on September 12, 2011, and I started my PhD September 26, 2012, 11. So it was
Well, how
basically,
did that feel? I mean, how did that, you'd gone through, you were being so resilient. This whole thing is you constantly persisting, it seems like.
yeah, I don't get it why I did it. If I go back to if someone tells me they are in this situation today, I'm like, come on, give up, get your PhD.
Right, right.
But for some reason, I had this obsession with becoming an economist after some point, especially after that law and economics class. I love the way Gary Becker was thinking about the world and
Mm,
to learn that thinking, really.
mm,
Uh,
mm.
and then Matt Jackson's class was beautiful. I remember he taught all of the models of signaling, screening, like Arrow's impossibility theorem, like
Mm.
Allman's thing to disagree. I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. So that was the obsession, but Paul was really instrumental. Like it wouldn't have happened without Mitch Polinsky and Paul together.
Wow. Wow. So, okay, you start. What are you taking? Are you taking the first year classes? You've
Yeah,
already got so much stuff under your belt at that point.
no, yeah, that was the normal first year, macro metrics.
Okay.
I failed the
Who's teaching you micro that first year?
micro was the first quarter was Ilya, second quarter was Ilya Segal, the second quarter was Douglas Bernheim, and the last quarter was Matt Jackson, which I have already taken his class.
Number three is information.
Yeah.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
then there was macro, and then there was econometrics, which was
Yeah.
very strange. It was Han Hong, Tom McCurdy, and Frank Volok,
Okay.
and I failed their comp. Uh, so then
Imbens doesn't teach in the econometric sequence. Imbens doesn't.
he wasn't there at the time.
Oh, he's still at Harvard. Got it. Okay. Is Al Roth there yet?
Alroth just came that summer of my first year to second year. He moved
2012.
2012,
He had
20.
just won the Nobel Prize, right?
exact. No, he won the Nobel Prize
At Harvard.
October 2012. No, at Stanford.
2012. He won it at Stanford. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I was a second year PhD student when he won the Nobel Prize, and actually I had his class. So that was basically the day he won the Nobel Prize, we had a class with him.
Get out of here. Really? What'd you think? Were you surprised?
Oh, I have never seen a Nobel Prize winner in person, so yes.
Oh my God. And it being your teacher.
Yeah, the cameras came to the class. It was kind of an amazing day. So it was a I love Al. Like he was the interviewers were asking him questions before the class in
Yeah.
Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research.
Uh-huh.
John Levin was sitting next to him. John was at the time chair of econ department.
Mm.
And at 8:55, 50, they told him we have more questions, and he said I have to go to my class. And they told him, but your class is at 9, and he was like, yeah, but I also have to get my coffee. Coffee is a big part of science. So yeah, Al's class was the most instrumental class in my PhD for sure. It
Really?
was, yeah, it was basically how my job market paper and thesis formed.
What's different about his class than like Milgram's or Jackson's?
But those classes were super amazing, and I love them. Al's class is full of ideas. It's like he is just
Oh.
talking about his practical. It's not a lot of math. It's mostly Al telling us stories.
Mm.
It's like constantly he says, yeah, we were thinking about like this kidney exchange problem. We did this matching, and then we realized we could do better the day after. And I'm like, great, this is now a dynamic matching, not a static matching. Let me write a paper on dynamic matching. So he was telling stories, and yeah, the class has ideas floating around if you're
Ah. Would you
so.
say that you're an applied theorist? I actually don't know exactly where the lines start and stop because it's clear like you're you're a very serious you're a theorist too, but like you keep kind of describing applied stuff like Becker and the law and then Roth's class. And so how would you how did what is it that makes your gets you excited? Or at least at that time.
Yeah, I don't know what is. I think applied theory has a specific meaning in the profession, so it's not
Oh.
a matter of vocabulary. I don't know exactly why we have converged to this. I would say I won't call myself a highbrow theory who solves like like higher order belief game theory or like fancy decision theory problems.
Hmm.
Definitely, I would like to. My own criteria is to really understand the world. That's it. It's always been. And the criteria I gradually developed over the years is that I want the outcome of this paper to be such that I can actually talk to the policymakers and confidently tell them something about it. So
Even
without that,
as a grad student in those classes, you
yeah,
could tell
this
that
is the
criteria was
Stanford,
there.
yeah, this is the way you learn theory. This is a Stanford way of doing theory. That is constantly told to me by Paul, Al, and Matt, all three advisors. Paul was my
Uh-huh.
kind of main advisor together with Al. They're like, hey, you cannot just write down a model because it's beautiful. You have to actually tell me that this is a good representation of the world and be confident that you can sit down in front of a policymaker and tell them something about the world.
Got it.
So that is constantly being told to you at Stanford. So I think that's really the reason many people who come out of Stanford doing theory are very much towards like things that look like applied theory.
I
Uh,
see. Got it. Got it. Got it.
so that's really education that I got here.
So
And
where does the
yeah, in a way, it has started from before too. Like Becker's models are, in a
yeah.
sense, very
Mm-hmm.
related to the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
And
wait, what's your job market paper on at this point? And where does it born? Where's the ideas for it? Where do you see it starting?
yeah, it was in Al's class. I had the class with Shengu Lee, who is now at Harvard. We were classmates.
Oh, okay.
And we were sitting in the Stanford Econ Lounge and exploring ideas for the course project. And we came up, basically, I was like, yeah, did you notice that these kidney exchange problems are static? But if like patient-donor pairs arrive over time or die over time, then maybe the optimal matching algorithm is not this thing that Al just thought. So that was the beginning. We started basically writing down a very simple simulation model to see how things change. We had a very complex model with blood types and everything. And over the time, we made the model much simpler to get to the essence
Mm-hmm.
we needed. And that was the starting point. And we could see a lot of interesting things in simulations. Like, for example, it was very clear that the elementary dynamic considerations show that the static algorithms are not necessarily optimal. They could be far from the optimal if you don't think about it. It's their option value of weighting and thickening the market.
Mm.
So we wrote down a project for the class. We couldn't solve anything seriously in terms of mathematically. It was a very hard model. And Al told us in honesty, actually, when we told him about this project, he was like, this is an amazing problem. It's like very hard to solve.
Mm.
So, and then the project was stopped for 6 months, actually, because we couldn't make analytical progress.
Mm.
And then this was one of those serendipitous moments. In addition to 500 other serendipitous moments of my life, I was in a beach with a bunch of Iranian friends. We were playing volleyball and football and things like that, soccer, I mean. And I have this friend from college who is a computer scientist.
Okay.
And he's now a professor of computer science in University of Washington at Seattle. He was my classmate in operations research, 1 year older than me in education. And we were chatting, and he told me, hey, what are you thinking about these days? And I told him this problem, just out of having him leave me because I didn't want to talk about research on the beach. He told me, look, you are writing the model in discrete time. If you write it actually in continuous time, then you can turn it into a continuous time differential equation instead of a discrete time equation. And then the probability that two events happen in your model at the same time is 0. In discrete time, things can happen, but in continuous time, they can't. So you can actually solve the model mathematically. I was like, are you kidding me? He was like, no, give me a pen and paper. And then we sit down together. On that beach, we proved the main result of that theorem. That was like incredible. So he became a co-author, of course, Shayan Kharan. He's now a co-author of that paper,
Yeah.
which came out in JPE many years later.
Huh.
But that's how that was really formed, which is
Wow.
and,
What'd
and
that
he,
feel like? What did it feel like on the beach doing that?
oh my God, that was that was definitely one of the best days of my research. I don't think I kind of felt this is an amazing result because it was also a lot of algorithmic thinking we both had and
Yeah.
Shengu actually. Later, we actually completed the results and proved many more things with Shengu.
Yeah.
But I wasn't sure until I presented at the Stanford the results. And Matt Jackson came to me after that. This is the first week of my third year of PhD. And he told me, I remember, he said, look, I've been advising students for many years. This should be your job market paper, and you can get a great job right now. He was like, this is a great result, great approach. You should definitely go to market with this. So I was very happy that
That was very validating. That must have been incredibly validating to hear that.
yeah, and it's reduced the stress of PhD massively. So I mean, kind of PhD is really stressful.
Yeah.
And this was really a very good event.
So what time? This is 20 now. Where are we? 2013?
We are fall 2013.
It's fall 2013. So this becomes your job market paper. You finish the master's the next year. Was Al and Paul Milgram, were they in the audience too when you presented those results?
Yes, both of them were there. Yeah.
What are they thinking?
They quite liked it. Yeah, they were not as sure that this is a like top-notch job market paper at the time. For the reason, like it was really a very computer scientific approach to this problem.
Oh.
So economists are really, as a philosophical point, we are used to making the model as simple as possible so that we can solve them. This approach that we took was coming from algorithms classes, which is you keep the complexities as is. It's a dynamic model.
Yeah.
It was actually a graph model, like it was a network that evolved over time.
Mm.
And instead of solving it, you approximate it.
Yeah. You've got this story where you're going through all these, you're going into the economics department the long way, right? Like you go through electrical engineering, you go through OR, you keep hitting up against econ. By the time you end up in econ, it just seems like I can just see these two knowledge graphs, and all of a sudden this whole other thing just becomes incredibly like disruptive and extremely helpful.
Yeah, now that I'm talking to you, I remember Steve Jobs' commencement speech at the Stanford, which he said, you can never connect the dots forward, you
Yeah.
can connect them looking backward. Really, that's what
Mm-hmm.
I like from him. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
totally right. Yeah, I completely, even until today, like my research and like there was another paper I wrote during PhD, which is called Approximate Random Allocation Mechanisms with Afshin Miksad. He's a wonderful co-author. He's in USC.
Mm-hmm.
That was actually basically taking an econ problem and instead of solving it exactly, showing that if you solve it approximately, you can actually do a lot more with this matching market. And that also came from my operations classes on randomized rounding and how to actually think about random allocation mechanisms.
Mm.
That's totally right. And Paul was a little bit like, look, I love this, but I'm not sure if my friends in like other schools like MIT, Harvard, Princeton,
Yeah.
Northwestern, you name it, they are all gonna hire a person who is doing essentially computer science in economics.
You
So
know, I keep now, I'm sorry to interrupt, but all I can think about now is this network theory paper you have with Jackson on the diffusion of ideas and in networks or anything, the diffusion of network in throughout the network. And you say it doesn't just depend on the structure, but the timing. And I just keep thinking like even Paul saying, I don't know if I could like sell this upstairs or whatever to these other big people. In a way, it's kind of like that's the structure of the network. Him saying it's all kind of connected. And then it's all kind of coming from the outside. All of your ideas are coming from the outside. So of course it's like not recognizable.
yeah, totally. I definitely heard this question of is it economics in job market a lot?
Oh,
And I was like, it's a resource allocation problem. I mean, I call it economics.
yeah,
So,
yeah, 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 yeah.
but
Yeah,
that was definitely the question I faced a lot. Which was, I mean, in a sense, whenever you want to bring some new approach to any field, you face resistance. There is no
right.
question.
Mm-hmm.
The network paper on just a few seeds more actually is like I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that one, but it's a paper about the problem of optimal seeding. And that one I also, with my co-author from actually operations research, Amin Saberi and Suraj Malladi, my student here, who actually was essentially the lead author of the paper. We also took a computer science approach to that problem and
Mm-hmm.
used a lot of approximation methods to prove results that, hey, optimal seeding, optimization is not important in that problem. You don't even need the network structure. It's a very
Mm-hmm.
serious theoretic approach. And we are still having reluctance. So the paper is still in the process after 7 years. So
No. Okay, so you go on the market and this is 2015, right? So you go on the
yeah,
market
yeah,
2015,
yeah.
but then Stanford hires you back. And I'm just guessing that's not every day at Stanford when they hire back the guy that they wouldn't even let into the program 2 years in a row, and then they end up hiring him back. So can you tell in my mind, I just think, well, Mohammed must have had a very exciting job market experience, and he's having his his own department fighting to keep him. What happens on the job market?
Uh, it was really fun.
I bet.
So I always believe luck and serendipitous events is an important piece of my life. So it was definitely the case in job market too, but I did apply to a bunch of schools. I, if I wanted to select 6 departments to have flyouts in myself, I got
Yep.
exactly flyouts from those 6 departments.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I got offers from all of them. So I had a fun time choosing between like MIT, Princeton, Chicago, Stanford, Berkeley, and so on.
Well,
Uh,
what's the deal? Why is Stanford dominating MIT, Princeton, et cetera?
it was a variety of reasons. My research really econ CS at Stanford was honestly the reason. I mean, it's like these are all amazing places.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
I wish
Mhm.
I only had one of them. I mean,
Yeah, right,
I
right.
still like I went to Chicago for a year and a half actually for a postdoc slash
Oh,
like
you did? Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So I still love Chicago a lot. I learned a ton from Chicago people, and I would be more than happy to be a faculty in any of these places, honestly.
Yeah.
For me, it was a little bit of really choosing the comfort zone. I
Was
my
being in Chicago for that year and a half, was it kind of romantic with it being like Becker and stuff?
Becker was actually
He
not
was dead. I
a
know he had passed away, but it
It
must have
was
felt kind of cool.
it was amazing. I
Yeah.
talked a lot actually to people that are not theorists. I talked a lot to Lars Hansen actually.
Mm.
Murphy, he was amazing. He's basically
Yeah.
the living Becker.
That's
Uh,
what I always hear is just that so you really enjoyed talking to him?
yeah, and then everyone in Chicago, like Emir Kamenitsa, Eric Budish, Roger Myerson, Phil Rennie, Ben Brooks, they were like an
Mm.
amazing group of economists in Chicago that I really enjoyed.
Hmm.
And I visited Harvard in 2019. I also enjoyed MIT and Harvard people. I mean,
Hmm.
like, yeah, this is really a privilege to be a professor
Yeah.
in these places.
Yeah.
Stanford was a mix of my partner was still a PhD student here. She had 2 years left, which was kind of weird because then I went to Chicago in that 2 years, half of it.
Yeah.
Uh, but also, it was kind of, I felt econ CS is an emerging field that's gonna shape the future of theory. I actually still think it's becoming more and more clear that it is the case. And
Yeah.
Stanford was really investing in that. So Stanford CS and MSNE and Econ, all of them, and GSB, where I got the offer,
Yeah.
were all clear that, hey, this is the future. We have to really have people have teach classes, students come here to do that. So
Mm.
I like the idea. CS department also made me a joint appointment, essentially a courtesy appointment for me to teach and work with CS students. So I like the setup here, but it was not an obvious choice at all. And I wish I didn't have all those options and had only one of them. I'm
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
very
Those are
happy.
always funny. It's always funny to have to make hard decisions because it's like,
Yeah.
uh, the like, yeah, it's like, it's that I totally get that. So you stay. So okay. Can you tell me a little bit about this paper with Matt Jackson, this diffusion within the network? I actually want to talk about this in a different one, but I've written about sexually transmitted infections a lot, and so I'm curious where this paper's being born because it's with Matt. So I'm wondering where it is originating and how you might explain it to like a PhD economist who's literate in this area, but then it hasn't kept up. So I'm curious, like, what's the deal with this study?
Yeah, it's in a way, it's a short paper that's making a point. Yeah, I don't think like this paper came up in my, say, tenure case because it didn't become influential uh,
Mm-hmm.
in econ at all, or even outside econ for time being. But actually, I love that paper's message. So a lot of the studies of diffusion in networks, like STDs in networks, they
Mm-hmm.
think of timing, meaning that is my activation in the network, am I gonna come to office every day with some fixed probability? Or sometimes they assume, no, you come to office like for back-to-back days, like 10 days, and then you don't come for 10 days, and then you come for 10 days.
Oh yeah.
So they consider these different activation patterns, but pretty much all of them think of all the nodes behaving similarly.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look at, okay, what is the probability of having an outbreak? And it's always more likely to have an outbreak if people are having a Poisson behavior, meaning that you come to office every day with a fixed probability.
Yep.
So even if I fix the ex ante probability of you are in the office, I could have you come every day with a fixed probability, or you come every month, all the month with that probability. And
Hmm.
these two give you the same average attendance, but very different pattern.
Ah,
So you
right,
could
right.
basically, some people would be yes, 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 no, 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 no. Some people
Yeah.
would yes, no, yes, yes, no, no, yes, no, yes, no.
Yep.
So what we said was actually let's think about what if people have heterogeneous behavior. Some people are like this, some people are like that, some people show up, and then look at the behavior of the diffusion. And
Hmm.
it has a very surprising result, which is if you look at the likelihood of outbreak, it's multiplicative, like 4 or 5 times, depending on parameters, more likely to have an outbreak if people are heterogeneous. So if some people are Poisson, some people are sticky.
How
Uh,
come? What's
uh,
going on?
it's basically the fact that they complement each other. So the Poisson people show up, give the disease to the sticky people, but these
Oh,
sticky people are around and are gonna give it back to the Poisson people when they show up the day after. The
what do
Poisson
you
people
think?
are,
Okay, go
yeah.
ahead. No, go ahead. Well, so, okay, in a sexual network, what's a Poisson person versus this other person? What is that?
It's a good question. This is for say a flu diffusion. I can see what is that, which is basically coming to office behavior, because you're going to diffuse the office to your office mates if you come. In a
Is it always the same when you're matching in this? In a sexual network, it wouldn't be coming into the same office because that'd be like some kind of monogamous thing, which would insulate an STI. So this must be like a person who's drawing pretty regularly from a partnership distribution within some sexual network that's already got some structure.
Yeah, in a sexual network, it would be. I mean, it's kind of weird, but suppose there are people who hang out with their sexual partners for extended periods of time and then disappear and go and travel and don't have any sexual connection for a long time. These are these are
Oh,
the sticky people.
oh, those are the sticky people.
Yeah. So
They
these are the
disappear
people
for a
that
little bit.
yeah, these are the people that if they get an STD today, they are very likely to give it to someone tomorrow as well because they are around.
Yeah.
But some people are people who show up like once every 2 weeks, have a connection with someone, and they don't show up after that. So it's about the like the frequency of your connection with someone else.
Yeah. And a different type almost, right? In
Yeah.
a sexual network, it would probably be, it's really making me think there's like all this heterogeneity of type within the network. Cause there's, there's got, like you said, there's got to be some, I mean, it would have to be some reason you're stepping in all the time and then never. But you're saying that those people are, they're really helping the spread of this diffusion of this thing a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
if
I'm
they
saying
weren't
that.
there.
Yeah, exactly. Those people are the sticky people are despite the fact that maybe on average they have equal number of like sex per year,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
fact that they are around for a whole month and sleep with a lot of people,
Hmm.
that is actually what makes the diffusion substantially more likely.
Hmm.
So, but this is a little bit hard in that context because it's much more easier to understand in the context of flu or diseases that you are contagious for a short period of time. Because
Hmm.
then these sticky people are super important because they get the
Hmm.
disease, they are around to give it to other people.
Well, what about like if you thought of you, okay, and this idea of like the computer science part of theory being the idea. What's going to be if your goal, if your hope, or no, no, not even your hope, if you're saying use this model to think about this kind of approach to theory being this computer science econ approach, well, what is it that would make it spread, and what is it that would make it not spread using that model? What kind of heterogeneity within economics will make that blow up versus just die?
You're asking me a question about the paper. The last time I checked was 6 years ago. So I have to,
I,
yeah,
s-
let me,
I usually tell people I'm not going to do that, but now I'm getting so excited about this paper.
no, no, I have to think about it. Yeah, it's a little bit of a, yeah, I have to think more. I can get back to you in
It's
a,
like a different, yeah, okay. Well, so all right, I want to talk about now this JP.
by the way,
Yeah.
Just I don't want to make it hard, but I don't know if you can cut things from this, but I have an 11:30 thing until
Oh, okay. We only have like a couple of minutes.
we have like 10 minutes essentially
Yeah, yeah,
now.
yeah.
But
Okay.
I can come back after that if we need, but
No, that's fine. We can, I've kept you a long time and then, but
oh, yeah.
I do like to,
I'm generally enjoying this a lot, but there is this meeting I have to make too for half an
yep,
hour.
yep. You got to be poisson on your meetings. You got to always, you got to
That's
be that guy if
so
this stuff's going to work.
I'm here for another 10 minutes.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, then tell me about this Iranian market for kidneys paper with Fatemi and Maturin, because first of all, every time I hear about markets for kidneys, I always just hear Iran all the time. But I actually do not know much more about it. If I ever hear it, I always forget it. So can you kind of, for the sake of the listener, some of the listeners, by the way, actually will not know about kidney exchanges more generally. So if you could just tell us kind of the elevator pitch of this paper and even a little bit about the hit, yeah, like anything you could tell us.
Yeah, it's actually we don't even have to know about kidney exchange to understand this paper because this paper is actually about market for kidneys. So buying and selling kidneys is illegal everywhere in the world except Iran.
Mm,
Illegal. So you cannot do that. There is, of course, a illegal market everywhere, massive illegal market.
mm.
But the legality is only in Iran, and places that don't have a legal market for kidney, they do other things. They have a long queues for deceased donors, and they do kidney exchange, which we don't really have to get to because it's not about the
I totally
Iranian.
forgot about it's the legal selling and buying that's in Iran, not the kidney exchange. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
Right.
basically, the all the innovations of Al Roth and Typhoon, Sunmez and Utko Umber and the whole kidney exchange, people,
Mm,
Khan and physicians in US, we have around 1,000 kidney exchanges per year in US. So
hmm.
it's really a small number if you know the demand is like 50,000 per year
Yeah.
or more, in fact. That's the lower
Hmm.
bound, essentially. So this is really peanuts. It's 2% of the market. It's
Hmm.
valuable. It's like you're saving 1,000 lives. That's amazing, but it's a small. And Gary Becker has this paper with Julio Elias that they say, hey, there is this abundance of kidneys. The price is not right. We have to set the right price.
Yeah.
And the question is, of course, first, is a market for kidney going to solve the supply problem?
Hmm.
Suppose we start paying people $100,000 for selling their kidneys.
Hmm.
The bigger question is the ethical aspect of it and the repugnant aspect of it, that Al Roth puts it.
Yep.
So the paper is really mostly about the first question, this paper, which says, hey, there is only one place in the world that you can actually look at the numbers and see whether the market solves the problem purely from an economic perspective.
Hmm.
And the answer is yes. So if you go and look
Really?
at the Iranian market for kidney, it's a heavily regulated market by the government. So if you want to sell your kidney, you go to this institution, you put your name down. There are people who go to the institution, the patients too, and then the government finds you a match in a first come, first served basis. But there are a lot of people who want to sell their kidneys at the market price, which is around 2 years of the minimum wage, not the
2 years
market
at the
price,
minimum. Hmm.
the regulated price.
Hmm.
And if you look at the numbers, the average waiting time to buy a kidney in that market is less than a year. It's around 9 months. And
Hmm.
also, even the patients who cannot afford to buy a kidney, they
Hmm.
are in a purely Pareto efficient sense, they are better off because now the queue of deceased donors is much less congested. So
Hmm.
now the average waiting time for a deceased kidney in Iran is also 6 months, just
Hmm.
because I have this massive extra supply of people who sell and people who are happy to pay to buy.
Hmm.
When you look at the market, I want to be careful, it's working purely from actually the fact that in Iran, if you need a kidney, you receive a kidney.
You'll
That's
get one.
Yeah,
You're not
Iran
gonna.
might be the only country that if you want a kidney, even if you are poor, you can quickly get a deceased kidney, and if you can afford 2 years of minimum wage, you can get a live kidney.
Oh, it's actually allowing the traditional methods to go to the poor people. I didn't even
Exactly.
think about that.
So that is, in this sense, I'm sure if you go to even poor patients, they're like, please have a market, despite the
I
fact that,
have never thought about that. I always thought you're going to be making the poor people pay, and this is basically segmenting the market,
I mean, in
but
a way,
not
it is segmenting the market in the sense that rich people are getting a premium live kidney and poor people are not.
right, right.
And I want to be clear, the sellers, I have data on the sellers too. The sellers are overwhelmingly from poor zip codes.
Yeah.
So that is a fact.
Mm-hmm.
There is some interesting observation here, which is Iran in a given year, they increase the price of kidney without really any announcement before, suddenly, by 50%. So they increase the price by 50%. They realize that they don't have enough supply.
Okay.
Uh, if you look at the distribution of wealth of sellers before and after of
Yeah.
this exogenous shock, you're zillion
Goes up.
times better than me in causality and so on. Uh, the Actually it shifts towards rights in
Uh-huh.
a significant way, meaning that
Yeah.
people who are more on middle class are also selling their kid, not middle class, but less desperate.
Yeah, yeah,
Are
marginally higher class.
exactly. So this is a suggestion that hey, if you set a price of $100,000 in US, maybe people who sell are actually not necessarily really poor people. Maybe you will have a queue and you have to run a lottery because many people are happy to sell.
Would you
This,
estimate an elasticity of supply off that natural experiment?
yeah,
What is it?
there are actually two of these jumps. It's like it's 0.6-ish. Yeah. So
Huh.
it's a pretty elastic. I have a supply curve. It's a relatively elastic supply curve.
Wow.
It's actually
That's actually, when you think back to you saying Stanford wants you to do something that's policy relevant, that you want to be able to go to a policymaker, giving them an elasticity of supply on kidneys and describing the distributional effects seems really valuable. I mean, nobody knows that at all. Now they know it.
yeah. Not that I
That's,
know of. I don't. The point is, this data really doesn't exist anywhere else.
yeah.
So that's really the only data. And yeah, it took my Negar, who was a master's student in Iran, and Fatemi, who is a professor in Iran.
Hmm.
They really worked hard for multiple years for that data. So that data really doesn't exist anywhere else.
We have like a couple of minutes, and I want to end with one thing. I want you to think about this quote by William Shockley, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 57 for transmitters, I think. And so he's got
Trans
this. What is it he wins it for?
I was an electrical engineer. Shockley
Yeah,
is
he's an electrical
an
engineer.
idol. Transistor.
Oh, perfect. All right, I'm gonna go fast. So he's got this paper where he looks at the distribution of citations. He's really interested in what makes a person be like in the right tail. He says, consider these things are involved in publishing a paper. And he says 8 inputs. He says, ability to think of good problems, ability to work on them, ability to recognize a good result, ability to write it up, know when to stop writing, how to profit from criticism, how to submit it to a journal, how to persist. And then he writes down a production function for a scientific article, and it's a Cobb Douglas in the sense of all of those inputs are being multiplied by each other. They're not being added together. Because like if they were being added together, you only would need 7 of them. You would need all 8. So I'm curious as we end on this, what do you think are the key parts of like your own inputs? What do you think that you have learned about yourself that are not your intelligence, but that have been really key parts of your ability to write papers in economics? If you think about them as like these these other non-cognitive things.
I add one thing and answer your question. One is that I do think it's actually multiplicative, it's not
Yeah.
additive, but I also do think you can have co-authors that help you with multiplication.
Mm-hmm.
Complementarity skills really help on that. The example being Cheyenne knowing how to solve a complex problem.
Exactly right.
But to answer to your question, it's a little bit of I mean, it's kind of like quote unquote narcissist to tell something about your own
I
ability.
know. Yep. It's
Uh, I think I get to a point after a few years that I can identify a problem and a question that is a question worth pursuing. And I
Mm,
think it's a question that if you sit down in front of an econ audience or even outside econ audience, they would kind of appreciate the importance of question.
mm.
So that was something that I somehow managed to learn, and that is my biggest help for my graduate student these days. They come to me and I tell them this is not an interesting question.
Got it. Yeah, right, right. That's the X factor, being able to say that, being able to see that. It's not easily explainable even.
Yeah, which also connects to even what theorem you want to write down. You know,
Mm,
like it's about, hey, if you have this environment and you start analyzing, in many cases, I even don't know what is right or wrong, so you have to analyze the model. But
hmm
you kind of say, hey, these are the types of results, whichever direction the problem goes, that you should think about them this way. Like that seeding paper I told you, I was like, hey, if you can show that with Suraj together, and I mean that if we can show that a few more seeds without any optimization is going to perform better than optimal seeding, then
hmm
I can actually, this result is very operational because a few more seeds has a tangible meaning for the policymaker and
hmm
the economists. So I think this is something that is underappreciated generally in our education of graduate school,
Yeah.
which is really how to start with a question and translate it into a presentation of a result.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right,
Uh,
right.
so that's my favorite example is like Bayesian persuasion of Kamenitsa and Jensko, which is like a lot of pieces of that paper were around. Like Aumann and Maschler had a lot of the tools developed before, but they
Mm,
really framed it and set it up in a way that the whole profession could understand the value of this.
mm.
And I think that's actually, maybe we should end with my favorite quote of Matt Jackson. Doesn't matter who discovers something first, it matters who discovers something last.
Oh, that's a great quote. That is a great way to end it. Well,
Yep.
it has been so delightful. I'm so glad that you let me get to know you a little bit better. I hope we can hang out. I'll let you play soccer on the beach and I'll just kind of watch it. I don't think I'm not gonna be able to hang with you. So I'm just gonna watch you do it. It was really fun getting to talk to you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Good.
She hated when I called.